gonna hang out? Gonna watch a movie?
Here, we have a water molecule and it has hydrogen bonds. Water's cool because it has specific properties like cohesion, which lets it stick to other water molecules, adhesion, which lets it stick to other objects, and it also has a high specific heat capacity. We also have our four main macromolecules, cheese representing lipids, protein powder representing protein, bread representing carbohydrates, and DNA representing nucleic acids. They all have different structures, and that different structure lets them do different things. But majority of the time, if a job needs to be done, it's probably by a protein.
This pigeon is an example of a eukaryote, and eukaryotes have membrane-bound organelles. This green ball represents bacteria, and is an example of a prokaryote. They can either have large or smaller surface area to volume ratio. A large surface area to volume ratio is more efficient than a smaller ratio. Right here is an example of active transport where ATP is required to go against the concentration gradient. Right here is an example of passive transport where it requires no ATP to go against the concentration gradient. Here is an example of facilitated diffusion where materials move across the plasma membrane with the help of a membrane protein.
Enzymes have an active site for substrate to bind to it, and it reduces activation energy for reactions to occur, and enzymes are not used up by the reaction. Cellular respiration oxidizes glucose and makes the electrochemical gradient to generate ATP. The light reaction happens in the thylakoid and captures energy from sunlight, which they change into chemical energy, which is ATP and NADH. The dark reaction happens in the stroma, and it uses CO2, water, and ATP and NADH from the light reaction to make glucose.
There are three steps to the signal transduction pathway. The first one is reception, which is protein modification. The second one is transduction, when a signal is amplified through phosphorylation. The third is response, and it varies. It could be gene expression, additional signaling, or even apoptosis. A reflection of this could be working as a train driver. Reception is him entering his workplace. Transduction is him entering the train and starting it. And response is the train starting to move. An example of positive feedback is blood clotting. It is positive feedback because the initial clotting event triggers a cascade of reactions that amplify and reinforce the clotting response. Thermoregulation is when a mammal's body tries to return to normal temperature. It's an example of negative feedback because it involves a response that opposes or counteracts the initial stimulus.
No. Wait.
Alright, meiosis happens and forms unique gametes for sexual reproduction. With crossing over, you increase genetic diversity. And here's an example of a regular chromosome, and you have chromosomal disorders. This is an example of non-disjunction, where you have an extra chromosome where they don't separate. Here's an example of deletion where you're missing a chromosome, and here's an example of inversion where the chromosomes are inversed.
Just remember this about Mendelian genetics. We love Punnett squares!
And there's also non-Mendelian genetics, which include dominance, codominance, linked genes, and sex-linked traits.
We freaking hate chi-square.
So we have DNA and RNA. DNA is a double-stranded deoxyribose, which has adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. RNA is a single-stranded ribose, which has the same, but instead of having thymine, it has uracil. Adenine binds to uracil, or adenine binds to thymine. Cytosine binds to guanine. DNA polymerase is an enzyme that synthesizes new DNA strands. RNA polymerase is an enzyme that catalyzes synthesis of RNA molecules. Here's a codon chart. Here's another one. Just learn to love these.
Natural selection is the process by which individuals with favorable traits are more likely to survive. Wait, no. Mutations are the spontaneous alteration of DNA sequences that introduce genetic variation in populations. Mutations can cause genetic or physical changes. Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is true when the population is large, the mating is random, and there is no migration, no mutations, and natural selection is not acting on the population. All these conditions are rarely met. Artificial selection is where humans identify desirable traits in plants and animals and take steps to enhance or breed those traits in future generations.
The Simpson's Diversity Index is a measure of diversity which takes into account number of species present as well as relative abundance of each species. There are different types of community relationships. A fewer competition, predation, mutualism, communalism, and parasitism. Competition is the ecological interaction between organisms that strive for limited resources, leading to reduced access and fitness for individuals involved. Predation is the ecological interaction where one organism, the predator, captures, kills, and feeds on another organism, the prey, for sustenance and energy. Humans can have lots of effects on ecosystems, such as habitat destruction.
Oh, one. Hey Mod, I got a pretty funny idea for our enzyme.
What's the idea for your enzyme? But yeah, that's it. Thank you guys for listening, and thanks Mr. Schechter for being a pretty cool AP Bio teacher.